In this video, I've got 5 trends that we can learn from in 2023 to help us prepare for next year. Hi, this is Everyday Prepper. Welcome to the channel. There's a lot going on in the world at the moment, from big military conflicts to governments passing sneaky laws while we're all distracted. And as a prepper, it can be difficult to know what to focus on when you're trying to prep for a number of scenarios. Now, in previous videos, I have covered what I believe are the essentials to be stockpiling on and stocking up on as a prepper. Absolute necessities like water storage, some food backup, and some form of shelter. And in this video, I'm going to focus on 5 developing scenarios or trends that could affect everyone going into the new year. These are things that I'm keeping my eye on. It may be different where you are. You might have things in a different order. You might have other things. These are just the top 5 that I've chosen for me that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. So let me know in the comments what you think might be the 5 things or more that you're looking out for next year. The first one for me is supply chain. In the UK, and I'm sure pretty much most of the Western world, we have what's called a just-in-time supply chain. And this is where we have just enough food and products available for when we need them. And as they go out of stock, the stock is replenished in a very efficient manner using this just-in-time system. And this system is comprised of many different links in a chain. And if just one of those links was to break down, then it could cause a major problem with the whole supply chain. One of those links is cargo shipping worldwide. And a lot of the shipping that supplies produce in our supermarkets and items that we buy, even online and in the shops, goes through the Suez Canal and also via the Red Sea. Now recently, especially over the last few days, it's now the 18th of December, we've seen attacks on cargo ships by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And they've also stated that they're going to continue to do so. Basically, any ships that go anywhere near an Israeli port, they're going to aim to attack with either drones or missiles fired from Yemen. And they're going to do that all the while the Gaza-Israeli conflict is going on. Now, if that's not bad enough, what's basically happened is because although the US and the UK and France, I know, and other countries have got warships in that area, they can't chaperone every single cargo ship. So what has happened as a result of that fairly quickly is that all the major shipping companies have now halted all that route for all of their cargo ships. So they're either rerouting around the bottom of Africa or they're just halted and not going anywhere. And this is going to have a knock-on effect, especially with insurance premiums. Insurance premiums are going to skyrocket because of the extra danger. And also we're going to have a shortage of cargo coming in. So this is going to put a restriction on supply, and anyone who knows anything about supply and demand, if the supply is restricted, then prices will go up. Now, the media are already starting to report on this, that we're expecting, or they're saying that we should expect prices to go up. Typical, isn't it? So my worry, it really is what with the interest rates being hiked recently, or certainly over the last year. My mortgage has more than tripled over the last year. And if the prices go up as a result of this major companies stopping shipping going through those routes, then I believe the Bank of England will turn around and blame that on him, or they'll call it inflation. They'll say prices are going up, we need to counter that with putting the interest rates up. Now that, I'm not an economist, that may not be the way it works, but I feel that is what they're going to do, just like they said that inflation was being driven by the war in Ukraine. So they'll use any, the energy prices, they'll use any excuse. And if they put interest rates up further, that's going to squeeze people even more. So how do we prep for this? Well, we need to keep doing what we're doing. We need to keep a steady supply of food as backup, so that if there are massive price hikes or even shortages, then we've got something to back us up. So, have however many weeks you can afford, really, as a backup. Have some water as backup. Have all the supplies that you would normally be stocking up on, including prepping supplies. So, any kit that you need, you want to be getting it in as soon as you can. Don't panic buy, but just if you haven't got everything you need, then just try and start getting it in now before the prices rocket. They may not. This may get sorted out. You don't want to believe the media every time they say something, but this kind of makes sense to me that it's going to affect the consumer. And I've already said in a previous video why I don't think that these attacks on these cargo ships are going to escalate the war or widen into a larger conflict. it's more likely to impact the consumer at the end of the day. Second trend I've been looking at is electricity provision and the grid in the UK. Now, I've been participating in something called Peak Save with British Gas, who I'm with. They and a number of other suppliers have something where the ESO, or the company that manages the national grid, they will call on major suppliers when they believe there's going to be a surge in usage, and they will ask those suppliers to go to their customers and ask those customers on smart meters, because they can monitor it, to reduce their energy consumption for a particular time. Last year I participated in this and I got something back off my bill, and it was all very nice and it was a bit of fun because I was practicing using my solar equipment. This year I've noticed a big change in that, one, they're giving barely any notice. So I've had an email literally a couple of hours before they want me to start reducing my consumption, whereas before it was like up to a week notice. And I've had like several of these peak saves occur during a week, well, 3 or 4 in a week, whereas before it was like 1 a week or 1 a month. So there's definitely an increase, and I put that down to an increase in electric vehicles on the road, and also the government trying to commit to their net zero agenda, where they're cutting down firing up coal stations, and they're trying to limit the use of those coal stations, and they're borrowing energy from abroad, from Norway, France. So what I've seen, if you look at GridWatch, you do a search for GridWatch online, you'll see the demand from consumers at any given time, and you'll also be able to see where that power is coming from. And the majority of it is coming from gas-fired turbines and nuclear power. There's a little bit from wind as well, sometimes solar during the bright days. But we're definitely seeing more strain on the grid. And also, regards to this peak save, you would have expected it if we haven't had a really cold winter so far, but we haven't. It's actually been really quite mild, especially in October. So I would definitely put this down to the increase in electric vehicles on the road and the government's reluctance to fire up coal power stations. Now, how do we prep for this? If you Google power cut on any given day, you'll see, I did it just earlier, you'll see there's literally thousands of homes in the UK that are currently without power and have been for a few days, all over the UK. And if you're one of these households, which chances are you may be, I hope you're getting through it okay, and it'd be interesting to see how you're managing. Please, let me know again in the comments, because I've seen some of these outages lasting for several days. I can imagine a few days without power must be massively disruptive. So going into next year, I would imagine there would be more of this disruption and more power cuts and more requests for this peak save if that carries on going ahead. Whether they can afford it or not, I don't know. I think the national grid pays the energy companies and then they pay it all onto the consumer. That's what I'm seeing so far. But I can only imagine it will be the trouble will be increasing. The main way to prep for this, in my opinion, is to have some kind of battery backup and a means to charge those batteries, whether it's with a generator, diesel or petrol generator, or solar panels. That's my choice, is solar panels, just because you don't have to fuel them and they just sit on the roof and you can just leave them there and then they'll just charge up during the day. And if you have enough batteries, then it'll give you more than enough, quite a bit of power during the night, and then you just top them up with the solar panels in the day. Even on cloudy days, if you've got enough panels in various angles, then I'm finding that it replenishes my batteries pretty well. I've got another video out about how to connect up a simple solar power system off-grid, connecting the battery to the inverter, charge controller and solar panel, etc. Please check that out as well if you haven't done already. Other than that, definitely prepare for water, just because I would imagine that if these power outages are really big and they last for a long time, eventually there could be some issues with the water pumping stations, or certainly the sewage treatments. So have some spare water. I've seen recently there were some councils that delivered a load of water to people's driveways, and the water was being stolen directly off of their driveways before they could even get to it. So, again, if you had some preps, then that wouldn't be so much of an issue. It'd be damn annoying, but, and we're not even seeing a full societal breakdown or civil unrest. It's just literally people are starting, the moment that water's being delivered, people are nicking it off people's driveways. It doesn't take much. So, when it comes to water, always have a backup. Next up, communications. This is another thing I'm looking out for into next year. So I have noticed that my signal, I've got two SIM cards in my phone, and the last week or so has been absolutely horrendous signal for both of those SIMs. They're with two different networks, And apparently, I looked into it. It was put down to a mobile phone mast that was having some work done on it. We've also had some recent problems with the mobile phone companies not paying the rent for where the masts are installed. So the landlords where the masts are installed have literally just cut the power off. So I noticed there was a recent government directive to make sure that mobile companies have their own backup power. It's like, well, why not just tell them to actually pay their bill? That would probably be better. But this was quite disruptive for me because I use my mobile for work all the time. And I was getting just a 3G service instead of a 4G. I'm not on 5G. And the other trouble with that is that certainly Vodafone, I don't know about the other networks, but they're going to be phasing out 3G as of literally next month, January. So when I have got a limited service or reduced service that goes down to 3G, I'll have nothing. And that's a bit of a concern for me. So what I'm basing these 5 things on is things that have potentially already happened, and which means the likelihood of them happening again are much higher than something that's never happened, for instance. That's my logic behind it. So with the mobile signals, I've just had a problem in the last week, so you can pretty much guarantee over the next year I will have the same problem. So it's about what do we do about that. The other thing that's coinciding with all of this is the switch over to VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, for landline phones. And so it's all going digital, so they're cutting off the analog lines. So if someone's internet was to go down and they didn't have a mobile, or they didn't have a mobile service, for instance, then they don't have any kind of communication whatsoever. So how do we prep for this? We need some alternative comms, and the main alternative comms that I know of, just because I'm an amateur radio license holder, is a radio, VHF radio. As an absolute minimum, I would say have a pair of walkie-talkies in your house. They're good fun when you're out and about. If you go out walking, you can use them then, practice with them. But they're just handy so that if the complete comms were down and you wanted to be out and about with a partner or family member, you might want to communicate. So walkie-talkies are great. They don't need cell towers to run their direct communication with each other. Going further than that, you can have a VHF radio, which has a much longer range. Currently, you have to be licensed in the UK to use VHF, which is one of the reasons why I got my license, and it's a great way of learning about how the radio works as well. The other good news about that is that Ofcom have recently announced they're going to be making some changes to the foundation license for amateur radio license holders, in that the very basic license, there's 3 different levels. There's kind of a foundation, intermediate and advanced. The basic license is going to be updated to allow much more freedom around tweaking your own equipment and the power that you can use to transmit on as well. So that's going to make a big difference. I think they're also going to make it a bit easier to apply. And as a side note, government emergency protocols have amateur radio as a backup. So, during a complete comms outage, there would be communications via VHF radio as well that you'd be able to listen into at least. And while we're on the subject of radios, I haven't got a base station, as some amateur radio enthusiasts have. I use handhelds like this one. So this is a Bofeng. It's a UV5R, it's a VHF and a UHF radio, so it can be used for a walkie-talkie, although the power is legally a little bit too high. And these are great. They can charge them on a USB charge port, so I basically just charge them off my solar power. And there's loads of amateur radio and the channels on YouTube, and also all about Bofeng radios, so do check those out. And the last point on comms that I had was, if you've got any instructions like PDFs on your PC that you might use or links that you go to for bug out bags or equipment lists or anything like that at all, you might want to make sure they're downloaded to your PC, so that if there is an internet outage, you can get hold of them. Stick them on a USB, stick them on a little USB drive, something like that. Stick them on your phone, just so that you can get hold of it in the event of an outage. Things like medical procedures, that kind of stuff. Fourth on my list is weather. Now, these are in no particular order. 2022 was classified by the Met Office as the hottest year on record, I think, in the UK. And some scientists are now saying it's virtually certain, to quote, that the 2023 is going to be the hottest year on record. So year on year, it's got hotter. So what does this mean? Well, it could just be that 2 successive years have just been hotter, which has happened before. But whatever it's to do with, whether it's man-made or whether it's just a natural climate change, if the weather's getting hotter, then it just means there's going to be more extreme events. And we've seen quite extreme floods over the last few years. We've seen extreme winds. We've seen hurricane strength winds in the UK. We've seen a lot more tornadoes and some severe droughts, especially last year or the year before. Unfortunately, I've barely seen any snow. The way I'm preparing for this is just making sure I've got barrels of water collecting. I've got a diversion from the gutter system that's diverting into several barrels of water, so I've got that in case of drought, so I can use that water as a last resort. You can drink it, we can purify it using purification tablets and boil the water, but certainly for washing purposes, because we have a store of bottled water as well. We've also got some sandbags just in case of any particular flooding. I think as I mentioned before in a video, I'm on a hill, so unlikely we're going to get absolutely flooded out, but we do get some flooding come down from the garden into a path leading to the house, so sandbags, that's what they're there for. And what we do have is a load of spare wood. Wood's great for just boarding up problems, holes. We had someone's shed go through our conservatory, so I had to board that up in the middle of a high wind and rain, but it did the job, stopped any sort of further damage until we could actually repair it. And if you're keen on DIY at all, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not already keen on DIY, then you've probably got a basic toolkit. Certainly recommend an absolute minimum. You want the two types of screwdrivers, flat head and a cross head, a pair of pliers, a hammer, maybe a box cutter, knife, an adjustable spanner, and then a box of wood screws. If you've got plenty of wood, get some wood screws, various sizes, really, really handy. And then you've got all the tools and or maybe a saw as well. With all of that kit, you'll be able to make some quite comprehensive repairs. Going a little bit further, if you haven't got a drill, a rechargeable drill, I'll say rechargeable because if the power goes down, it's no use to you if it's a plug-in one. I use rechargeables with interchangeable batteries. What's absolutely been a game changer for me is this impact driver, and this has it's separate. I used to use my drill to screw in tough screws rather than having to use a screwdriver, and it just didn't have enough power. And this thing will drive a screw through anything. You don't have to drill a hole first, and it comes with an interchangeable battery which I can use on my drill or I can use on this, and it just literally just slots in there, and it's got a power level on here. I don't know if you can see that, and I charge all this up using the charger. It's a plug-in charger. It's about 60 watts it runs at, plugs into the mains, so I plug this straight into my inverter, and I don't think I've ever used it on the mains. I've always used the solar power, so I just charge that up on the solar. Runs at 18 volts. Really, really powerful. When I built my chicken coop, I got about halfway through and my wrists were killing me from just screwing all the screws in, and as soon as I got the impact driver, it just went up. I managed to finish it off in half the time. So moving on from that, number 5 is one that I've come up with really, which is personal resilience. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that word because the government use it a lot, but I couldn't really think of another word. So personal resilience for me is about staying mentally fit and also physically fit. If you're doing a lot of DIY and that kind of stuff, then you're going to need to be fit. You probably are already, but I'm not getting any younger. You find that as you get older, especially over 40, certainly as a male, you end up with muscle atrophy, where you just start to get weaker unless you're actually taking in the protein and actually exercising on top of your daily activities. It's just going to get worse and worse. And I figured that in an SHTF situation, I want to be able to at least get up off the floor. I want to be able to get up a ladder without my legs shaking. So just doing some kind of resistance exercise, even if it's twice a week, like squats or push-ups, a couple of times a week, will just be enough just to keep you. You don't have to be a complete bodybuilder or anything like that at all. I mean, I've done weights in the past, but just fitting it in around your normal schedule, keeping reasonably fit, is going to make things easier in like a grid down scenario or an emergency scenario. And as for cardiovascular fitness, some of you may be already very fit in that area. I find that every now and again, I find that the odd hill walks are really good for cardiovascular fitness. You can get used to it in like a week or a couple of weeks. I also use the NHS Couch to 5K app for running, which is absolutely superb. Even if you don't become a fully fledged runner, it's really handy just to get you out and about, gets you breathing hard, gets you working out sort of 3 times a week as well. And the other part to personal resilience is learning the skills that you need. One of the skills that I kept putting off as a prepper was learning properly how to use a ferro rod and start a fire with that. And I mentioned this on a previous video, and I had a comment from I think the user's name is smallbikeadv. So thanks to you, I've practiced it and we've sussed that out. So it's using cotton balls and a ferro rod is just so much easier. So cheers for that. If you've been putting off any of the skills that you might need for prepping, or some DIY skills, some repair skills, things like that, just learn how to do it, or maybe download some documents and stick it on your PC so that you've got a reference point. If you've ever been camping, you'll know that camping is all about innovation. Something always goes wrong, something breaks, a guy rope breaks, and you have to innovate. And if you haven't been camping before, then no problem. Just get outdoors more, and exploring the outdoors is great to get a sense of survival. It's really hard to explain, but if you try it, you'll know what I mean. Now, all of this that I've talked about is really just so you can be prepared to put it to one side once you're prepared and you've got those skills and you've got all your preps in place, so that you can then live your life normally. This is what I keep harping on about, is the last thing you want to be doing is then checking the news for each terrible scenario. As long as you've got all of these basics behind you, then you're going to be less reactive and much more proactive, and you're going to be prepped. You're going to have that peace of mind, and you're going to be able to relax and just live your life and get on with it. Chances are we're going to have a pretty normal life over the next several years. Things will change, but it will be gradual. That's what I'm hoping anyway. But if SHTF does happen in whatever form it does, then at least we'll be prepared. So with preparedness comes some security, bit of peace of mind. That's what I'm aiming for. So I hope you found this discussion useful, and if you have, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe so you can get some more content like this. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. Stay prepared.